Jim Turley, a man for all seasons. Please give a warm Trojan welcome to Jim Turley.
You are all being trained right now to enter a profession that is both very strong, domestically and globally, and getting stronger. But that was not always the case. And so I think as you begin to look towards your future, it is important that you understand what the profession went through in the not too distant past. When I was introduced, you said I was asked to become the CEO effective the 1st of July in 2001. Sometimes timing is everything. For those of you who were at that time in high school, a couple of months after I became CEO, September 11th hit. And a couple months after that, Enron hit. And we were in the middle, both before that and after that, of some of the deepest recessions that we had seen in a long period of time. And I remember extremely well, on about December-ish of 2001, we'd be having internet-enabled webcasts with all of our partners and principals, trying to explain to them what was happening. At that time, the Anderson firm was still alive, was in deep peril, but was still alive. And we were spending a lot of time talking about what was happening. And I'll never forget, during one of these webcasts, one of our women emails me in a question, and she says, Jim, she said, in the last 6 months that you've been leading this firm, we've experienced the deepest recession we've seen in some time. We've experienced war being declared on our country September 11th. We've experienced, now after Enron, war being declared on the profession. And I'm pausing, trying to figure out where the question in this is. She says, my question is, are you having fun yet? And so timing is everything. You are coming into the profession at a great, great time. But as I said, it wasn't always that case. We took a lot of shots. We deserved them. We had not done our jobs well. We had really, in many ways, failed to meet the expectations of the many stakeholders outside of our firm and outside of our profession. And I think what is very positive about those days, as tough as they were, we learned a lot of difficult lessons. We learned very well the dangers of arrogance, because we had been acting in the 90s as a profession and as a firm in a very arrogant fashion. We learned, I think, really well the importance of listening to a much broader cross-section of people. We'd always spent a lot of time from the time I joined our firm in 1977 listening to our clients, to the financial management, to the executive management, to the audit committees and boards. But we learned during these dark days that we needed to listen to a much broader group. We needed to listen to regulators. We needed to listen to investor groups. We needed to listen to the politicians. We need to listen to the media. We even need to listen to the academic community. And it's a lesson we learned very well. Also during this time, we stood back and we asked ourselves some pretty fundamental questions. We asked ourselves, why is it we do what we do? You know, there's a lot of ways to make a living, and we're all getting beat up every day now. Back in 2001, 2002, why do we do what we do? And does what we do really matter? And the positive thing for the profession, frankly, the reason the profession is as strong as it is today, is what we heard is that what we do matters a lot. And it matters to a lot of people outside these windows, outside of the halls of Ernst Young, outside the halls of the profession. And it matters because people rely on what we do. They get a great deal of confidence from what we do. They feel better that the playing field out there is level. Investors and market participants feel better when they understand that both individuals and companies are playing by the rules, being it accounting rules, tax rules, whatever. They feel better and have more confidence that the right transactions are being entered into and they're being completed in the right fashion. So they get a lot of confidence in what they said to us time and again, is without confidence, they wouldn't be investing. And without their investment, there wouldn't be any growth in the world. And so it became very clear that what we did mattered a lot. And I think it gave all of us a real sense of purpose. Because without that, all we were doing was getting criticized. It was very interesting because I spent a lot of time during these days talking to my counterparts, leaders of the other firms, because some were bristling, if you will, under the scrutiny, because we're looked at by every regulator in the world, we're looked at by every media outlet in the world, by every government in the world. And my perspective to this was then, is today, that I would much rather be very heavily scrutinized and really relevant to others than neither. And I've lived this on both sides. We were a very sleepy, quiet profession for a number of years, way before you were old enough to know. But now we're out there in front doing important work and rightly being held accountable for the quality of what we do. So how do we think about all this? The topic that you want me to talk about is the world. We think about the environment in which we operate from the outside in. We think about the world around us, and we look out there and we see an enormous array of potential. People have a lot of potential, the companies out there have a lot of potential, the communities in which we all live and work around the world have a lot of potential. And the way we think about it at Ernst Young is actually to dedicate ourselves around the globe to helping others achieve that potential. We try not to think about it from an arrogant perspective, from our own perspective, but we look at those with whom we come into contact, and we try to dedicate ourselves to helping them achieve potential. We try to make a real difference. We just peel that back. We touch a lot of different people. Today, on a global basis, we're about a $22, $23 billion organization. If I had to guess today, we have 135,000 people all around the world. A lot of people think about Ernst Young in this country as being a U.S.-centric business. It's anything but. Of our 130+ thousand people, my guess is about 35,000 are here in the United States. 95,000 are in the rest of the world. We operate the firm very much as a global business, not as a U.S. business that has a whole bunch of people outside the U.S. That's why I travel like a maniac. It's why I keep a home in New York and a home and a flat in London. And 75% of my life, I'm in neither of those cities. Because you can't lead a global organization by just sending out emails and voicemails and whatnot. So we think about first the people we touch. The most direct touch we have is with these 130,000 people that are today calling Ernst & Young their business home. And we very much try to build the organization. You talked about the people first culture around a mindset that is helping them build skills, careers, resumes, to have the flexibility to achieve success, not just in their work lives, but also in their home lives, and to provide them the kind of mobility. We talked at our table about the fact that it probably doesn't matter much where each of us geographically start our career, because we're going to be in multiple different cities throughout our career. And so we try to foster those kind of values and cultures within Ernst & Young. We end up, having some success at that, thankfully, knock on wood. A few weeks ago, we were recognized by Training Magazine as an inductee into their inaugural class of their Hall of Fame, being one of the top 6 learning and development organizations in the world. Not the top 6 in our profession. None of the other 5 honorees were from our profession. We're viewed as someone that is really dedicating ourselves to the ongoing growth and development of the people of Ernst & Young. You all do an exceptional job here at SC of training people to join our profession. We then realized we have a responsibility to keep that learning process going in many, many ways throughout a career. And so we've had great success there. Likewise, we try to make it an opportunity for our people to have the chance to grow and experience different things. I'm not a very introspective person by nature. You know, a lot of people leave Ernst Young. A lot of people in our profession, you know, go on and are hired by clients, hired by others. Sometimes leave and come back. We have so many boomerangs rejoining us that it's just incredible. But when I was asked to lead the firm, I did pause and I thought to myself, why am I still here? Because a lot of really good people I knew, great friends, still great friends of mine, are no longer with us. And what dawned on me is the reason I was still here is that every 4 or 5 years I got a chance to do something new, something different, something often with a geographic move, sometimes with just a role-based move within the same city, but I got to stay fresh. I got to keep learning. I got to keep growing. And so it's that mindset with which we dedicate ourselves for our people. We operate in 140 countries around the globe. We dedicate ourselves to a promise of delivering seamless, consistent, high quality in each of those countries. And it's a heck of a challenge when we're across all the national cultures, all the accounting and auditing systems we operate against, all the regulatory systems. So to bridge all of this, again, thinking about our people, we have to have a global set of values, a global code of conduct, a global culture that really makes everybody feel like they're part of the same team. And it's something we've, again, had great success with. In this country, we were recognized recently as being one of Fortune magazine's top places to work, top 100 places, for the 10th year in a row. One of an exceedingly few number, again, none in our profession, that have been in the top places to work for 10 years running. I'm delighted that the entirety of the Big Four are all on the Fortune list of the top 100 places to work. I'm even more delighted that Ernst Young is a lot higher on that list than the other three, but that's a separate issue. But so suffice it to say that on the people side, we really try to dedicate ourselves to helping each of our people achieve their potential. Let me turn for a second to companies, because in the same way we're thinking about the people that are part of us, we touch an enormous number of companies around the globe. Oftentimes you might think of us as being a group that serves primarily big, large, powerful, Fortune 1000 and Fortune 100 leading organizations, and we do a lot of that. We've got the leading share of the audit market in the Fortune 1000, but it's far from the only thing we do. We also have a real deep commitment to entrepreneurship, to helping the kind of companies that are growing jobs, growing innovation, not just in this country, not just in Silicon Valley up to our north here, but in the growing economies around the world. And we celebrate entrepreneurship the world over and have for now almost 25 years. What we do is try to help these startup companies who are truly changing the environments in which they operate, changing the lives of their workforce, and we try to do everything we can to help them achieve the potential that is in this kernel of idea. I've met some of the most amazing entrepreneurs around the world. They have a vision that I just wish all of us could share. They see a need in the marketplace, and they have somehow the inherent vision to develop an idea to meet that need. And they have the courage to go put it all on the line and risk a lot to go develop that idea. And they have the strength to pick themselves up when they fail. Because almost every one of the successful entrepreneurs that I've met has failed 2 or 3 or 4 times. Pull themselves up, dust themselves off, and start again. Very few people succeed the first time. We try to help support these entrepreneurs on the ground wherever they're operating. helping them achieve their potential. And I think the most important, perhaps, long-term impact we have is the way we interact with the communities in which we live. It's also one of the probably newer developments in Ernst Young. If we've committed to people for a long time, if we've been committed to entrepreneurship for a long time, it's relatively new that we've gotten much more focused on the commitment we have to the communities in which we live. We feel very lucky, and we've always encouraged our people to give back to the communities in which they live and operate. But doing so in a more organized way is a new thing for us. What we've realized is when we pull together and think about our social responsibility as a collective as opposed to just an individual responsibility, we can have greater impact. And so what we're doing is taking some of the core skill sets of our firm around learning and development, which I've talked about, around entrepreneurship, around corporate governance and standards, and trying to use those skills for the betterment of the societies in which we live. So we'll take our learning and development network and infrastructure, and we'll take our knowledge of financial matters, and we'll mentor young disadvantaged high school kids in financial literacy and in other matters, and do so in New York, in Chicago, in Dallas, in cities around the world. Taking students that don't have, the leg up that many of us have in this country, many of us in this room have, and try to help them move forward. I live in New York, and one of the programs we've been doing for, 15 years or more at the Adlai Stevenson High School. It's a high school in the Bronx. Not a place that is very pretty. Not a high school that any of us would really want to be at or have our children go to. The graduation rate on balance is something about between 15 and 20% of their students graduate on time. And we have, over the last 15 years, I think, mentored 600-700 students at Adlai Stevenson. We don't take the easy cases. We take the hard cases, and the students we've mentored have graduated at a 95% rate. So you can have an impact if you capitalize on what you're good at and then focus it where it's needed. And so we're doing that around mentoring. We're doing that around building economies and how to get places like Russia, places like China, places like Kazakhstan, other countries where the economies are developing. We're working, I think, in this fun facts I saw out here. It talks about how I worked with the Foreign Investment Advisory Council in Moscow. We're advising countries that are in development stage about what reforms they need to make their economy more conducive for direct investment and more supportive of entrepreneurship on the ground. It's all about giving back. It's all about making an impact. Let me, overlay this with just how we look at the world. I saw some slides about 10 years ago, that maybe it was quite a little bit less than that impacted me a lot. And I wrote down some numbers that if you looked at the world, the entire population of the world, and broke it down to be 100 people, 6+ billion people, consider it 100. Here's what the 100 would look like. About 52 women, 48 men, 30 of them white, Caucasian, 70 non-Caucasian, 30 Christian, 70 non-Christian, about 85 or so heterosexual, about 15 homosexual, 57 Asians, 21 Europeans, 14 Americans, and 8 from Africa. There's no real surprises there, it's just demographics. The surprising piece comes next. Of this 100 people, 6 would control almost 60% of the wealth of the entire world. 6 people. 80 people would live in substandard housing. 70 people of the 100 wouldn't be able to read, even in their native language. 50 people would suffer from malnutrition. And how many people do you think would have computers? Any guess? Pardon me? 2. 1 or 2. 1 or 2 would have higher education. So to me, as you are preparing for the next step, you need to think about the world, because that's the world. That's the world I see when I'm all around in all these places. And I think you need to position yourself to understand the world, not as it is inside the beautiful hedges at SC, but as the world really is. Because there's a lot of opportunity out there, but there's also a lot of need. And so figuring out how to be yourself, an individual, and how to be in an organization that understands all the differences that are reflected in those data, that respects those differences, that embraces those differences, that seeks out ideas from people that don't look like you or talk like you or speak the same language as you. Those have to be really core skills in each of your success. Because absent that, I don't think success will be as robust as it can be. I'm asked oftentimes at our intern leadership conferences, and many of the people, or how many people have been interns at Ernst Young recently? I met some earlier. They all have seen me make a fool out of myself before, because they get me dressed up and introduce me in some bizarre ways. But I'm asked often, what is really the key, and how did I get to be where I am? I think the key is very much really thinking about the world, understanding the world, and being a part of the world. There is little doubt in my mind that whoever succeeds me, that man or woman will have lived overseas at some point in their career before they became CEO. That's one thing when I look back I wish I would have done. I've traveled extensively. I keep the flat in London, so I'm there a lot, but London's almost not a foreign country. They speak the same language as I try to speak. But it is something that I think would be a growth experience for everyone in this room to figure out how to get the kind of experience that comes from embedding yourself in a different culture and realizing how important that is, not just to your professional growth, but to your growth as an individual.